Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are back once again to continue our WrestleMania project, and this time we are hitting on WrestleMania 12, which took place on March 31st, 1996, in Anaheim, California, at the Arrowhead Pond. This is the same venue that would later host WrestleMania 2000, and I usually don't make a big deal out of crowds unless it's from a positive perspective. But this WrestleMania, I think by far through WrestleMania 12, was the worst and quietest crowd I think I've ever acknowledged here throughout this series so far. So did put that out there. I thought maybe it was because the crowd was small. It really wasn't. It was slightly larger than the kind of the going rate, which has been about 16,000. The attendance for this one was 18,853. This was the first WrestleMania of the Monday Night Wars, kind of as those were taking place. Lots of talent had either jumped ship or threatened to jump ship to WCW due to the lighter schedule and obviously more money. But yeah, it's Vince decided to combat WCW. One of his big strategies was going to be straight wrestling only and no celebrity involvement, which is a huge difference because that had been almost to the forefront of the previous manias. Celebrity running around throughout the night, or definitely a celebrity involved at one point or another. So definitely feels like a different mania, and lots of debuts for this WrestleMania, and yeah, it just feels like we're continuing almost turn that page. Still have a few from those earlier manias, but definitely have a different feel to this WrestleMania. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the opening contest of WrestleMania 12. We'll review every match and review the entire show as a whole, per usual. The opening match has Owen Hart, British Bulldog, the debut of Vader with Jim Cornette going up against Yokozuna, Jake the Snake Roberts, and Ahmed Johnson. KP, what'd you make of our opening contest of WrestleMania 12?
Honestly, not a bad opener. I thought this one was quite fun to watch, generally speaking. It was kind of chaotic as well, throughout certain parts, especially towards the end of the match. But yeah, I had a good time watching it. I thought it was pretty intriguing and entertaining throughout the contest. Yeah, it just generally how the match went down was as you'd probably expect from a 3 versus 3 with two very large guys in the respective teams. It had some slow parts, and then it had some other parts which sort of like allowed for a different sort of taste of what you could experience during the matchup. We had some technical show from the likes of Owen Hart involved, as well as the British Bulldog, maybe a little bit of power on that part as well. I thought Ahmed Johnson looked particularly impressive during this contest as well. He came out the gates really hot, very quick, agile around the ring, strong as well, very dynamic. And yeah, I just think that generally speaking, we saw a lot of everybody here. Maybe Jake the Snake, you didn't see too much of in this one, probably the least of the six. But in terms of the match itself, yeah, I found myself quite enjoying it. I guess we'll put in the end where Vader enters the ring. And he takes out Jake Roberts, who's looking to hit a DDT on Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette's obviously at ringside here, just putting his 2 cents in every chance he can. And Vader then hits the Vader bomb on Jake the Snake in order to pick up the victory. What I did notice from this one was that Jake and Vader, they weren't the legal men. So in terms of tags and who was legal, this one did get away from the referee, and in terms of just generally the flow of the matchup, I noticed it clear as day. I was like, I swear it was Owen Hart, and I think it was I can't remember who the other person was, but either way, regardless, 2 different people were legal at the time, and yeah, it was not Vader and Jake the Snake who were legal at this point. Neither had received a tag from their respective legal team members up until this point. So yeah, it was quite interesting the way that it just sort of like went down, just because that's how it was planned. Obviously, that's what it was meant to be, and they just sort of just got to that point as quickly as they could. But honestly, it didn't take anything away from the matchup. I still really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. Just that maybe lack of continuity towards the end was perhaps like a big point that I saw, but I still enjoyed it and had a lot of fun watching it. I gave it a 6 out of 10. I like the chaos that you just achieved towards the end, and it sort of like gave a nice sort of opening feel to WrestleMania. Just get a load of guys in, showcase them off a little bit, and yeah, raise the stakes and show some intensity to begin with. So yeah, I thought it was decent. 6 out of 10, not too bad, and not a bad opening contest. What did you make of this one, Nick?
Yeah, pretty much a similar light. I thought it was a quality debut match. That features a lot of guys we'd already been familiar with. The likes of Yokozuna being a face, I thought was different. And then the debut of Vader, obviously had been over at WCW, got removed from his contract back in September of the prior year. Was actually recovering from shoulder surgery, but Vince, having a very thin roster at the time, uh, very, in a Vince way, I'm sure, requested that he come over because he needed someone to match Yokozuna his stature, I guess you will. But yeah, I thought this was a great. I did not call the. Or I did not catch the wrong person, legal person being in the ring. But yeah, I thought in terms of tag match, I thought this was pretty decent. Got a ton of time, and was a great way to kick off the match. And speaking of a ton of time, with only I believe 6 matches throughout the night. You would think that everything would get time, and I kind of like that. Again, I love the approach we've taken over the last few manias, and that is quality over quantity. So I give this one a 7 out of 10 to kick off the show, which is one of the higher kickoff matches of WrestleMania series so far. With that, we will kick off the next match, which is a very different feel to what we're normally opposed to. This is Roddy Piper making his return, going up against Goldust, who is making his WrestleMania debut in a Hollywood Brawl. Fun fact about this match: this was originally supposed to be Goldust and Razor Ramon for that IC title, but was scrapped because Razor made his future known that once his contract was expired, he was headed off for WCW. So again, a very common theme throughout the time. And another interesting bit: the first match of this match we see, or the first part of this match that we see outdoors, and then later we see them come into the ring. That first part was filmed about 3 weeks prior to the WrestleMania. So, KP, this is a very unique match. I think that's fair to say. Something we've seen a ton since, but at the time, this was very different, especially for that WrestleMania stage. What'd you make of it?
Yeah, unique for sure. And I think, when it comes to these sort of like backstage sort of matches that lead into the ring, we don't tend to see that too often in modern day PLEs. So nice to see something a little bit different, even go back to this sort of time frame and watching this take place. I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was quite fun. It was very like the original, like the first match I described being chaotic. This was chaotic in a slightly different way, in a more sort of, drawn out, very aggressive manner. I liked it. I thought it was that little bit of uniqueness that sort of went into it, which got me gripped into the contest. Roddy Piper and Goldust. Yeah, let me break down how this sort of all played out in the end across the course of the night, because this was a really long story across all evening, really, or most of it. So you've got the Hollywood Backlot Brawl, which begins, and they're in the outside. Like you said, it was filmed a few weeks ago. And that sort of ends with Goldust running over Piper and driving off. So this had been after Piper had dominated basically the entirety of this backlot brawl, and Goldust found an opening very, very quickly towards the end, and that just gave him a few moments to quickly get into his car, run over Piper. He sort of like drives into him, and Piper just gets up onto the hood and is able to sort of like stay there quite safely, realistically. And then he follows up in his little van that he finds on the side of the lot, and follows him along through all traffic and everything. Throughout the course of the night, you've got Vince going back, just highlighting the updated situation, just like getting sort of like there are like calls from Roddy Piper saying that he's going to get his hands on Goldust, and it's all very it's not meant to be comical or such, but I couldn't help but kind of like smile at just like how they kept going back to it, and this like ever ongoing situation throughout the course of the night. During all the rest of the matches, we just get little updates here and there, and when they showed some like footage, almost sort of like traffic cop style stuff, where like you got the big like eagle eye view looking down on the guilty people who are just like driving along. It's quite interesting, but it gets to a point eventually in the end of the night where we do get them both in the ring and in the arena. They come back in, and this is very much dominated by Goldust at this point. he has a lot of control over Roddy Piper, and after a very big surge of offense, Goldust ends up biting Roddy, which then spurs a fight back from Piper. He sort of gets to a point where he lowers down Goldust's suit, revealing some women's lingerie that he's wearing. And then Goldust, obviously, not meant to have showcased that for the world. He gets dragged out of the ring by Marlena, who's been very much an influence with Goldust at this point, and basically just coming to his aid. And she sort of like helps him back, covering him up as well, and helps him to safety. So that ends the match between these two men. And I think it goes down as Roddy Piper getting the victory, if I'm not mistaken, in this one. I guess because Goldust fled, I'm assuming. But yeah, apparently that was the way that things were worked out. So Roddy Piper does beat Goldust after a very hectic, long, over the course of the night, very entertaining in parts, backlot brawl that led into the ring, and both men showcase a lot of dominance throughout this one. There's a lot of Piper early doors, a lot of Goldust later on in the matchup. And then obviously it led to quite a funny moment, comical at the end with Goldust, getting into a bit of an embarrassing situation. But yeah, I thought this was quite fun. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. Just generally speaking, there was a lot that went into this, and I think they handled it really well. Just the general presentation of it, and going back to it over and over. Yeah, I think they did a good job. They didn't allow you to forget what was going on, so that was a really good point. So yeah, 6.5. I liked it. What did you make of this, Nick? Because this was a very different feel. Obviously, it was there was a lot of stages to it, but did you feel that they did it really well, or maybe do you think there was some glowing issues there perhaps throughout?
Yeah, with the first match being more of an organized chaos, this felt like it was kind of disorganized chaos, and not from the standpoint of the match, because as you kind of attested to, it felt like it flowed nicely. Like we had still, like they did a good job of reminding us that this match was still taking place. Very much, this is obviously the second match of the night, and if I remember correctly, it ends up finishing the second to last match of the night. So definitely a lot of space in between. They could have easily forgot about it, but they did a good job of reminding us that that was still going on with the phone calls from Roddy and the camera footage. I wasn't sure if you would know about this, or even of the original existence of it, but the actual chase footage is from the OJ Simpson, very infamous, at least over here in the States, the OJ Simpson chase in that white Bronco. Is very iconic, for better or worse, and that's the footage they were using. So they probably had Roddy find a white Bronco to be able to do that. But I'm not sure how they got the rights to that, but maybe it wasn't that hard. I don't know. But anyway, that was an interesting bit as well. But yeah, in the actual match that took place later in the night, even the backstage brawl was very different. The gold Cadillac, that was pretty cool. And when the bit where he ran over Piper, that was all real, and he jumped on it. He jumped on it at the exact right time, so that was pretty risky. And yeah, I think I've always loved the character of Goldust. I always wished that they had taken him a bit more seriously, because obviously Dustin Rhodes is a great talent. I think later in his career, especially when he jumps ship over to AEW, you can see that much more than you ever could with WWE for the most part. He's good at the comedic timing as well, but he's also a very good wrestler. Comes by that naturally, obviously. But yeah, this was a good match, and I like it. Very unique, and it was fun. And it wasn't like a wrestling clinic by any means, but at the end of the day, it's entertaining, and that's what we come here to do, to be entertained. So I gave this one a 6 out of 10. Yeah, it was definitely very unique, and a lot of like the backstage brawl stuff is obviously something we see more of as the Attitude Era takes shape. But for what this was is very unique, and I think you picked two of the right guys to do it. So yeah, 6 out of 10 for me. Getting into the next match, we see another debut, this time of the ringmaster, Stone Cold Steve Austin, who at the time is the $1 Million champ, but is not defending that title on this occasion. He is with the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, and he's going up against Savio Vega. KP, what'd you make of Stone Cold Steve Austin's WrestleMania debut?
I really liked this match. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was really sort of competitive, very back and forth. Generally just a really solid match between two men who we're not used to on the WrestleMania stage up until this point. You know, both making their debuts here on the grander stage. Yeah, I think this match had a little bit of everything. You know, it was won in the end via submission from Stone Cold. And that was not without its its interference in this one. A little bit more on that in a moment. But yeah, basically, Savio, he was rolling at one point. So he attempts a spinning heel kick, which instead of hitting Austin, actually hits the referee instead. So he gets, sent crashing down to the canvas. He gets knocked down. And with the referee down, Ted DiBiase distracts Savio not once but twice on very quick separate occasions, and during the second time, Austin grabs the $1 Million Championship, which Ted DiBiase had thrown into the ring, unaware of Savio Vega noticing. Savio Vega didn't notice. He was very unaware to the slide of the championship into the ring. Steve Austin picks the title up, strikes Savio Vega with the championship, and that would be enough, sort of like just to completely just lay him out. Stone Cold Steve Austin locks in the $1 Million Dream, which obviously a submission very much made well known by Ted DiBiase himself. So passed down to Stone Cold, and that would be enough in the end to basically to see out the rest of the matchup. The referee does eventually get back into some consciousness, and then he would declare Stone Cold the winner via, I guess, like a referee stoppage style submission situation. But yeah, I guess Savio Vega just fading out there and not being able to continue any further. But yeah, this match was really fun. I liked it. I think it was just a showcase of two men. Neither man, sort of like didn't get the chance here to show off what they can do. And I think it was a really good debut match for both men. Just, to get them onto the WrestleMania stage, just to let them just sort of like have a good one-on-one contest. And even with the the interference at the end, I just think that really helped in just generally speaking, just have this as, it was it wasn't a clean finish, but it didn't like hurt anybody in the process. Savio looked really strong still. Stone Cold Steve Austin, obviously going to any means necessary to get the victory here, shows how into it he was, particularly at that point. I think it's done a lot of good for both men, realistically from a neutral position here. And yeah, I just had a fun time watching it. I gave it a 7 out of 10. I liked the back and forth. I just thought it was really good, showing off both men. And yeah, I thought it was good. What did you make of this one, Nick? As highly as me, or maybe not so much?
Yeah, it was, and kind of the theme you see of the night for the most part is it was just a good wrestling match. It's strange seeing Austin not loved by every single and or hated by every single person in the crowd, because the crowd, I kind of mentioned that in the opening part, the crowd really didn't care much about most things throughout the night. They were just kind of felt like they were kind of sitting on their hands a bit, especially during that main event, which we'll get into a bit, but had some pacing issues, I think. But in terms of throughout, just throughout the night in general, it just I think it's kind of typical of the area. Just didn't really care, like they didn't want to be there that much. So it did bother me, and I think this match kind of was affected by that. But yeah, Stone Cold Steve Austin making his WrestleMania debut. They had the Roddy phone calls coming in throughout this match, as he's in pursuit, of Goldust. But yeah, for the match itself, I think it was a good contest, and both men kind of held their own. Um, Ted DiBiase throwing that cup of soda over the ref to wake him back up, and then for Austin to hold that sleeper on him as the ref drops the arms. I missed the arm drop. I liked the arm drop. I wish they hadn't have gotten rid of that. I know it's predictable, a lot of times, but it was just cool to have that as more so of a hard judgment as opposed to kind of the ref kind of had making his own discretion and his own making that call on his own discretion. But yeah, to hold that in, obviously Austin being very much a Ted DiBiase guy at this point. It's just crazy how quickly things change from here. But yeah, that was a good match, and I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. Another consistent match, and what was a pretty consistent WrestleMania. Getting into the next match, though, we kind of have our one kind of ugly herring, if you will. We see the Ultimate Warrior, who is making his return after a 3-year absence, which wasn't going to be the case Vince and him could not agree to terms to part for the course. Vince and Warrior always had their issues. But the mediator that ended up coming into play that was able to get him back in was, of all people, Linda McMahon, who had a great relationship with Warrior. So that was the reason we have to thank for Warrior's return. And he gets a debuting for his WrestleMania, Hunter Hearst Helmsley with Sable. So interesting combination there. Yeah, a few talking points on this one, but KP, what did you make of the, albeit very short, WrestleMania debut of Hunter Hearst Helmsley?
Yeah, exactly that. I was about to say it was a very quick one, wasn't it? Didn't last too long. This it actually starts really well for Hunter. He gets a very strong start. He hits a pedigree pretty quickly into the match. I want to say maybe like about, I don't know, 30, 40 seconds in, maybe around that sort of area. And yeah, it looks like at that point he's going to be rolling. He's going to have a great match. But then as he hits the pedigree, Ultimate Warrior gets up, unaffected by the move. And yeah, he just goes through his motions, series of clotheslines, goes for a shoulder tackle. Warrior does his gorilla press and then drops Hunter down, hits the ultimate splash, and that's enough to get the victory. So it literally was exactly as I just said there, from the start till finish. Yeah, there's not really much to say because obviously it was very quick. So, I mean, Hunter, you can't really sort of say, he looked impressive here, except for in the early stages, he looked pretty good because he genuinely was for all those, 30, 40 seconds, if that. So, yeah, he's unfortunate because there are better matches than Hunter, and obviously we see that later on in his career. But yeah, in terms of this particular one, this obviously showcasing the return of Ultimate Warrior on the WrestleMania stage in a in-ring competition manner, and yeah, just just him getting the job done pretty effectively, pretty quickly, and pretty smoothly. So yeah, I can't really give it higher than a 2.5. It was very, very fast, and there's not much to cover. So yeah, when you get situations like this, you can only say a certain amount. So that's basically all I've got to give. But what did you make of this one, Nick? Obviously, it was lightning fast. So do you have anything else to add?
So, because of how quickly this happened, and essentially it was a squash match, right? Um, I was curious if this was the Hunter punishment, because during that time we had an involvement in the clique and the infamous scene of all of the clique breaking kayfabe, which was very much a no-no at the time, with the rest of those members, Scott Hall, Shawn Michaels, and Kevin Nash. And so I'm still not 100% sure. I don't think that had taken place yet. I don't think that place take place till May. But I had wondered, but I don't think the correlation is there, or at least maybe he knew about it. But regardless, Ultimate Warrior came back. I think it was more so on Ultimate Warrior that had his very specific match that he wanted, which was the typical, Ultimate Warrior match style. I think that was more so on him, especially the no sell and the immediate comeback after that pedigree. And I know I had seen that there was some backstage issues with that, rightfully so. I believe it was Gerald Briscoe who told Hunter, "Don't let him no sell your move like that." And I think, I think you could argue that could have been career. That could have much affected his career in the long run. Luckily, it didn't. But yeah, I think he ended up doing okay, but that could have been a big deal, if he was at this time kind of cementing his legacy, and for Ultimate Warrior just to kind of act like it didn't happen was a questionable decision, and it kind of teed me off a bit. So yeah, as for the match itself, I did give it a 3.5 out of 10. This was one of the few moments of the night where the crowd was reacting. I just wish it was for a better reason as opposed to this 90-second squash match. So, yeah, for better or worse, it wasn't entertaining. It wasn't, the worst WrestleMania match, far from it, that I've seen so far. I just don't understand why they couldn't go a bit longer. I think that's more so of Warriors' limitations. So, with that, moving on to the next match, we have the next match in Undertaker's streak with Paul Bearer, this time going up against Big Daddy Cool and Diesel. For me, this was by far Taker's best Mania match up until this point. A couple of big guys in Diesel and Undertaker. KP, what'd you make of this one?
Well, firstly, yeah, I would agree also that this is Undertaker's best match so far on the WrestleMania stage. I think that Diesel gave him a match that I think he could have particularly been proud of. Yeah, it was a really good back and forth match, and it had an interesting dynamic to it. It was a little slow, but it was very hard fought, very competitive. And I think Diesel did such a good job here of being the heel that he was obviously meant to be during the matchup. Undertaker had a great comeback towards the end. It just, in terms of a storytelling matchup, this one just worked. It was very simple, but it did an effective job, and it did the right job as well, more importantly. And yeah, it just did everything it needed to do. It gets to a point in the end where Diesel, he hits 2 jackknife power bombs. He hits the first one. He's sort of like playing around with his food a little bit. He just like takes his time, very calm, very confident. And then eventually picks Undertaker up. He goes for another jackknife. And at this point, he is literally just like, full on confidence. Like, it's just absolutely shining. He goes over towards Undertaker, and yeah, he takes a little bit too long doing so. Undertaker puts like a hand up to Diesel's neck, which is, obviously how he'd set up for a chokeslam on many of occasion. And Diesel actually fends him off a few times. I think it's probably about 2 or 3 times he fends him off here. And eventually, Undertaker just gets a little bit more sort of confident each time. And he eventually puts his hand back on Diesel's neck, and he does get up to his feet, hitting a choke slam. And yeah, then after nailing a leaping clothesline, going for a tombstone power driver, that'll be enough to get the victory here for Undertaker, and his streak continues. So yeah, I think just generally speaking, this had a big fight feel, whereas the previous matches in Undertaker's, WrestleMania displays, I don't know if they had a big fight feel per se, but they were up against, for the majority of them, some big guys. But I think this one had the biggest feel to it, and it translated the best so far. From bell to bell. So yeah, I think this was a really good contest. I had a lot of fun watching it. Like I say, just a tad slow, but I don't think that really did anything bad for it. I think that helped these guys sort of like, be very methodical. It was sort of like, quite vindictive, throughout the matchup, and that helped them, just have a nice general flow to it, really, when it comes down to it. But I give it a 7 out of 10. Like I say, I thought it was a solid contest, and yeah, nice to see Undertaker have, finally watching the series, a good match at WrestleMania. So yeah, we did discuss, maybe it's the talent that he's in the ring with, maybe just weren't able to sort of like keep up with them at the time. Maybe just the vibes weren't there for these matches. But this one hit the nail on the head. I think across a couple of those little descriptions there. So yeah, well played to Undertaker finally getting a good match that we can remember as being probably the first of his good contests.
Yeah, I think and that's perfectly said on your end. This had that big fight feel, and it very much did. Just from the size of the two guys. Forget how big Kevin Nash is a lot of times, but then seeing how big he is compared to the Undertaker, who obviously is a big talent as well. Yeah, like we both kind of said already, definitely a far cry from all of his other matches. And further to that, it felt like Diesel was the first legitimate opponent for him, and that I wasn't, had I not known the outcome based on the streak, I would have very much doubted Undertaker's, ability to win this match. But I think that therein lies the difference of the Undertaker compared to, Ultimate Warrior and Hulk, who a lot of times would essentially no sell their opponents, whereas Undertaker is clearly affected by, those 2 jackknives, but sells it enough to where it makes his opponent look legitimate, but then also has to tap into that otherworldly power of the dead man to be able to make a comeback. So I think it's just about that storytelling. It's just so much more interesting and so much more intriguing, and art that the Undertaker has obviously mastered over the years. So yeah, really, really high praise for this one. I gave this one a 7.5 out of 10. Generally a fun contest, and like I said, a far cry from the other matches, who I think was more so, I guess, about just setting up the Undertaker as this otherworldly talent. But this was legitimately a good wrestling match. So I very much enjoyed this one. And just like that, we are to the main event. Again, another short card. But again, I feel like the quality over quantity, give me that every single time, because I would always prefer good matches, if fewer of them, than a ton of, for lack of a better word, shit matches, which is a lot of what we got throughout those first WrestleManias. So it's nice that we've kind of turned the page here, whether by, whether this was on purpose or not. because of that thinning roster, it played out in our favor, at least for this watch. The main event has Shawn Michaels going up against Bret the Hitman Hart, defending that WWE Championship in a 60-minute Iron Man match. And of course, we see the iconic HBK entrance, coming down zip line essentially from the top of the arena. That was always a cool moment. I wasn't sure which moment that originated from. Now I can confidently say it's WrestleMania 12, so that was cool to see. And preparing for this match, very opposite to Randy Savage method, which was preparing for weeks, sometimes months before. These two gentlemen, and Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, laid out this match the morning of. So make of that what you will. This was I think this is a very, I think, controversial match, because I think you have a lot of people who, if you like wrestling, this should be a match you like. But if you're a very casual fan, which WrestleMania is often geared towards, I could definitely see the case, and I would listen to arguments for this match being a bit of a slog. So I think it's all about your perspective on wrestling and what you enjoy, and I think that kind of plays a part in how you enjoy this match. Obviously, this is something very different. We've never seen anything like this, at least on the Mania stage. But KP, obviously, we're both wrestling diehards. What did you think of this match? And can you kind of see the point I'm trying to make here is, I could definitely see this being a topical match, if you will, in terms of what it provided and how long this match was. The crowd coming into play here too, because I mentioned that earlier. For a good portion, probably the first half, which granted there wasn't a ton going on. It was very much like a wrestling clinic, what these guys were putting on. And I don't think the crowd in general really cared much for that first half. But what'd you make of the match for this main event of WrestleMania 12?
So, yeah, I'll agree. This is a very topical discussion. I think this is one of those matches that you either will love or you will hate. Call it a Marmite match if you really will. Just going down the route of just generally speaking, this match is very, very long, okay? It's over 60 minutes. So my interpretation of being able to sort of like dumb this down to summarize it and to go through everything is going to be very, very challenging here. But I'm going to do my best to summarize it in the way that I can, that sort of highlights all the important features during the matchup and what led to the closing segments of the contest. To answer your question first and foremost, I really liked it. And I think you are not exactly surprised by that answer from me, because like you, I love the technical side of wrestling. And this is exactly what we got throughout the first, well, at least 35 minutes here of this matchup. And that's a note that I made into this one. It goes longer, but let's talk about those first 35 minutes first, because in that opening half hour and, a little bit just after that, it's a very, very technical display. It's very much, it's got that big fight feel. And I said that about Undertaker and Diesel. This had an even larger big fight feel. And both men, they sort of come out the gates knowing exactly what it was going to be. It was going to be a kind of a slow burner to start with, builds up, very progressive, and gets into a very much, a match that's going to be a wrestling clinic. It's not for those who aren't, looking for, a lot of graps, because this had a lot of it. For someone who's maybe looking for more of like an explosive style, quick sort of bursting, yeah, you're probably going to be disappointed with this one. And like you said, you can either like it or you can loathe it. And I can definitely see the pros and cons, on both sides of the argument. And if you're not really into the whole, grappling style wrestling, which is very methodical and very much a wear down process throughout the matchup, yeah, you're probably going to think this is not really the match for yourself. And that's completely fine. That's absolutely okay to think, because that's essentially what the first 35 minutes was. I'd probably say Michaels had the better of the first half hour, give or take a few things here and there, because there were some close calls during this first half an hour. You had a power driver from Bret Hart, which resulted in a near fall at 2. He had a crossbody reversal. Shawn Michaels going up to the top rope, hitting that crossbody, and Bret just transitioning the way over, which is seen so many times, especially in the early WrestleManias, resulting in a pinfall. And, could be winning a title, could be just ending a matchup, generally speaking. We've seen that happen quite often. So that was, again, another near fall. A little bit of drama coming in there, because I think even Vince on commentary, he was getting really into it at that point. He thought maybe that was a pinfall, because at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be first fall throughout this matchup. It's as many pinfalls and submissions as possible, and just the winner at the end is the man who has the most pinfalls at the end of the time. So there could have been more than one or whatever that we get throughout the matchup. Let me talk a little bit more about the later on stages. You get Shawn Michaels hitting a sweet chin music to the timekeeper. This is just after he's laid out Bret Hart across this poor timekeeper. I think it might have even been Tony Chimmel. I'm not entirely too certain about that, but it looked kind of like him. I didn't really get a good look, but if it wasn't, I apologize. I'm sorry, but it looks kind of like him. But yeah, he hits the timekeeper with the sweet chin music. The referee takes a bump at one point after Bret Hart lands a dive on both himself, but the referee and Shawn Michaels. And then, there gets to a point where Michaels gets launched over the top rope to ringside. That results in a really nasty landing. It's about 37-minute mark that took place, roughly, give or take. Then that allows Bret to take control with a series of submission attempts, various other wearing down moves. And honestly, this goes probably a good half hour at least, probably a good 25 minutes, at least here. It gets to about 3.5 minutes remaining, where Michaels finally gets back into the match. He actually starts picking things up, and he gets some momentum here very late into the contest. Currently, it's still 0-0 here as well, so at this point of the matchup, 3.5 minutes remaining, a fight back from Michaels means, okay, well, hold on a minute, maybe Michaels going to get a pin here, and he's going to win the championship, because, one fall at this point is probably the end of the contest at this late stage. So he gets back into it, starts taking control. That leads to a near fall from an elbow drop. Michaels then follows up by hitting a moonsault, which again results in another near fall. And then with about 30 seconds left, Michaels gets a little bit too overzealous, goes back up to the top, and when he's going for a dive, he gets caught in the sharpshooter by Bret Hart. And as Bret's got it locked in, he's got it locked in really, really strongly. He has it locked in until the time expires. So at this point, 60 minutes have expired, and Bret Hart, has the sharpshooter locked in. The referee rings the bell, and because it's 0-0, I guess technically speaking, in that sense, Bret Hart assumes he's the WWF champion still because, no falls, therefore champion's advantage, he keeps the title. And I think naturally that probably would have been the outcome. But we do get a little bit of a situation after that where the WWF title gets given to Bret. He's walking up the ramp, and Gorilla Monsoon, he walks into the ring. He starts talking to the referee. Before then, an announcement is made over the announcing system that the match will continue in sudden death overtime, as there must be a winner. And Roddy Piper went on record saying there had to have been a winner in this matchup. For whatever that's worth, maybe you can delve into a bit more about why Roddy was mentioned in those late stages, Nick. I didn't get a chance to have a look into that one myself just yet, but I would love to know exactly how that came to be. But yeah, regardless of the fact, a winner had to have been decided in this matchup, so we go to sudden death. The matchup resumes. It continues once again. Bret goes back in control on Shawn Michaels, as he was in those very late stages with that sharpshooter. It gets to a point though where Michaels hits a sweet chin music out of absolutely nothing, literally just any last little bit of energy he had in his soul. He just put all into the sweet chin music, and that's enough to lay out Bret Hart to give Michaels enough time so that both men can get back up to their feet pretty much at the same time. And at this point, Michaels sees an opportunity. He knows that he can get the job done. He hits one more sweet chin music, and that allows him to win the WWF Championship in this main event of WrestleMania 12. So that is my general summary of how the match went down in terms of the most important parts to it. Obviously, you could argue that maybe there have been little bits here and there that I've missed, and that's absolutely fine. If I try and go through all of it, we're going to be here for a long, long time. So to try and not make this last too long, that's just my general synopsis, and hopefully I covered everything that, should have been mentioned here realistically. But in terms of what I actually thought about it, I loved it. I mean, hey, look, it's a wrestling clinic, and this is the kind of match that I really enjoy. Yeah, you could maybe make the case that, it was possibly a little bit dragged out in parts, but honestly, I didn't really find that to be the case for me. I just thoroughly had a great time watching it. I thought just the way it just sort of like worked out, the storytelling of the contest, the crowd being involved as much as they were, it almost felt like they were sort of on the side of both men in the end, which was a bit odd because I think at the start Michaels was getting more of the bad reception for the crowd, but that sort of turned around, and I don't know, it's a bit of a fascinating concept. Maybe I misread what the crowd were really doing at the start, but that's sort of how I played it out to be here in this one. I think just the way they sort of like turned things around there for Michaels was made for a really wholesome moment, especially when he was celebrating with the championship at the end. And obviously, you can see the emotion in his face. Vince is telling him to celebrate, kid, go on, celebrate. I loved that as well. Just generally speaking, they just had a really good, wholesome, feel good moment at the end. And Bret Hart, he is one of the best, and as is Michaels. To be fair, you put these two in a ring, you give them 60 minutes, you know you're going to get a wrestling masterpiece, an absolute clinic. And that's essentially what it was. And I had a great time watching it. There were a lot of moments in between that I've mentioned, I've glossed over, and they made for some compelling points, throughout the entirety of the contest. So, yeah, I loved it. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. I think I do prefer shorter matches. So maybe you're wondering, oh, well, how come you already give it an 8.5 KP? Because obviously, you're basically just singing its praises here. I think I do prefer shorter ones, that we do have a little bit more fast-paced energy in. But I still thought this was a very entertaining, very good, very fun match. And it appealed to the wrestling, enthusiast within me that, just really does enjoy these for what they really, really are. So yeah, 8.5, what a main event, really, really good stuff. And yeah, what a moment for Michaels at the end there, winning that title. Nick, I've spoken a lot. Here's your chance. What did you make of this one? How did you feel it went? And what about that moment at the end for Shawn Michaels? Just getting that adulation. It was a great moment and it was a great match, right? What did you think of it though?
Yeah, like I said, this was, I think you could argue this was probably a pretty diverse match in terms of, wrestling debates on, where this main event stands in WrestleMania history. Um, yeah, the first part of this match, and I want to say like the first 30 minutes ish, basically is just the holds, very technical. If you like that, then I think you like this match overall. Like I said, I think the crowd definitely kind of helped bog it down there at the beginning. They were just showing like obviously you can see the crowd reactions there at the beginning, and they're just it almost look like they're bored. Which uh, maybe this match could have benefited from being half the time, but then I don't think it would be regarded as so highly if that were the case. But you could definitely tell that they were taking their time and kind of making sure that they didn't overdo themselves too quickly, which I think is kind of necessary for a 60-minute match. I think that I think a lot of people probably just don't understand. Like these guys are both athletes at the time, obviously, but even they had to very much prepare for the cardio aspect that this match was going to require. So I think that probably goes on some deaf ears, but is just competing for 60 minutes in ring. The cardio that must require, I think, probably not known by a lot of people, myself included. I don't think I quite understand how much cardio that training that would take. But obviously, these two men are athletes, and having to do that themselves, I think, is a testament to that point exactly. So, yeah, I think the first part was a bit slow. It was fun for me to watch, but I could definitely see the argument, and the general audience would be like, not super inclined to watch this one simply because of how slow it was at the beginning there. But yeah, I did enjoy it. I don't think it's the best match. It just kind of struggled with that pacing a bit. But for me, being a diehard wrestling fan, I did enjoy it. But can definitely see the arguments against. What I will say was having Bret lock in that sharpshooter as time was expiring, that just felt like the writing was on the wall that was okay. This was it. It was shocking. I don't know whose call it was, but I think it works out for the better. I had a lot of thinking on it in my thinking on it by myself. If going the entire match 0-0 was the best call, or if it would have been better if they had gotten a couple falls in, if they're going into the final there at 2-2 or even 1-1, if that would be a better decision or not. And honestly, I can't come up with a definite answer. I think the 0-0 just made it seem like these two guys were just both that good, and this match was that important to both of them. So I think the 0-0 is the best call, but I could definitely see an argument for maybe having a couple matches or a couple pinfalls or before the end, and maybe that first 30 minutes isn't as bogged down. Maybe get a little more action in that first half. I can definitely see the argument for that, but I think the way they kind of put it out, regardless of what the score was at the time, the fact that it was tied going into that final moments, and it felt like it was going to be super obvious that Bret was going to get the win. With time expiring. Obviously, we see that a lot in today's product. It is a bit predictable, but yeah, it didn't go with that. And then to have Gorilla Monsoon go in and say that they are going to have that sudden death aspect of it, which was Roddy Piper's call, who at the time was kayfabe acting as WWE president. So that's why he was involved in that at the time. But yeah, I did enjoy this one. It isn't my favorite. I just think it, like I said, it was a bit slow, and I could understand that, but I enjoyed it. It's just having to sit down for 60 minutes to watch a match. It didn't feel like it though. It didn't feel like it was a 60-minute match. I think it was entertaining from two of the best guys in the business, of all time. I think you could argue, but absolutely of the era, were two of the best in WWE. And to give them 60 minutes was a huge risk, and that was a huge risk from Vince McMahon to have him do that. But I think it was effective, and obviously is an iconic match to this day. Just one that I had never got around to watching for whatever reason. But I did enjoy it. I did give it an 8 out of 10. So just a smidge below you. I think as we get through this WrestleMania project, I will enjoy this match more. But just something about the pacing just kind of kept it a little lower for me. But again, far from a bad match, very good match actually. Just that pacing of that 60 minutes didn't set the greatest with me, who is a diehard wrestling fan. So I can imagine to the common fan that WrestleManias are typically geared towards, that maybe not being received as well. So with that, this is WrestleMania 12 in the books. KP, give us your overall rating and obviously your final thoughts, if you have any, for WrestleMania 12, and we will get this one wrapped up.
Yeah, I mean, this had a very different vibe to it because you've got one match obviously that goes an hour long, so naturally we haven't had that leading up until this WrestleMania. So a lot of attention does go on to that main event because it was so long. It was a large part of the show in terms of percentage. It was the majority by some way. But with every other match on the card, except for the I guess you could call it the squash match, Ultimate Warrior and Hunter Hart's Hemlsley, I thought they were all pretty solid, to be fair. I mean, my ratings are all pretty decent. Overall, they come down to an average of a 6 out of 10. And if you take away that Ultimate Warrior and Hunter Hart's Hemlsley match, you're probably getting something a lot higher than that. So probably getting around the 7 or so. So yeah, I mean, WrestleManias always include these one match, these couple of matches here and there that are meant to be, stupidly quick, do a certain job. And I'm not saying there's anything bad about it, but it's just, that's just generally the situation that happens to be. So the rating gets drawn down a little bit more. But just generally speaking, across all these matches, yeah, they were pretty solid. They were pretty fun. And they did the right things throughout them. And like I say, we had a decent opener. We had a crazy brawl that took place throughout basically the whole of the night, until the second to last contest that we saw. Steve Austin and Savio Vega making some really good debut matches with themselves, and then Undertaker having his first good match in his streak. Yeah, there's a lot of good things to take from this. And then obviously that main event, which was just a wrestling clinic. I just felt this was a really solid WrestleMania. Honestly, this is probably my favorite one so far that we've done. Whether that's obviously going to be agreed with or not by yourself, obviously I'll wait and see in a moment. But yeah, I think just generally speaking, the quality was a lot higher, which was just what I look for. So, it was nice. It felt really good. And just watching through it didn't feel like a chore, which some of these WrestleManias have done in parts. I think we can both agree to that. But yeah, this one was a pleasure, and I really did like a lot of what we saw. So that was obviously really, really good. So yeah, I think a 6 out of 10 is not too bad. Just shame about that one match that sort of dragged it down a little bit more, but I had fun regardless. What did you make of this one, Nick? Was it as good as I'm making it out to be? Is it sort of your best WrestleMania so far, or is it sort of somewhere between those two situations?
It is the best WrestleMania so far, coming in at 6.3. As you mentioned, you take out that Triple H Warrior match, it is definitely higher. But yeah, I think and we've kind of seen it slowly over these last few manias. Definitely seeing a change of the tides, seeing in with the new, out with the old. Very much outside of Warrior and Roddy Piper, a lot of debuts and or new faces of the company for this WrestleMania. So definitely felt like a breath of fresh air. Obviously, that main event being very unique, and the rest of the matches being very good. So very consistent card, for all things. And like we kind of hit on already, the Monday Night War is very much in full effect here, and you can kind of see it with the card. And I think that was the biggest reason why they probably got the go ahead for that 60-minute Iron Man match to, sink or swim, if you will, and have this WrestleMania be based solely on, pure wrestling matches, which was, a far cry from what we've seen before, whereas a celebrity kind of takes hold of a lot of the important storylines of the night. But so this was a nice change of pace. Some might call it not as exciting if you're a general, maybe not a huge wrestling nerd like we are, but for us, I think I really enjoyed it. Obviously, at the time, you have Hogan and Savage over in WCW already with Orndorff, and then you have Scott Hall making his clear that he's heading that way. And as we know, a very famous that click moment, which took place a couple of months after this. WWE is a very different company right now, and I think for provided the talent that they had and the very small roster, I think they made the best of it, and somehow we're walking away with this being our favorite WrestleMania. So I think that's just a kind of a testament to how great this show was booked. You have a smaller cards. One more bad match, and all of a sudden, maybe it's not being received so well, or that Iron Man match doesn't do as successful as you think it does, and you have a 60-minute stinker to end the match or to end the night. Obviously, that would be a huge fail as well. So I think there were a lot of risks taken with this WrestleMania, and I think for me anyways, they definitely paid off. So with that, that is WrestleMania 12 in the books and all done. We like KP said, a couple of these WrestleManias were not the most entertaining to watch, and this was a nice change of pace. The last few have been different and better. Sometimes, most of the times, better, but definitely different. So it's nice to see a change of pace with these WrestleManias. And yeah, we will be back shortly with WrestleMania 13. Very actually going to work on that one today. So very little turnaround time as we catch up to that ultimate pace, which is one Mania per week. We're almost there. 13 and 14 are kind of our last busy weeks, and then after that, we'll be doing one a week. So we'll likely be a bit longer as we'll have the time to do so, but we'll be able to enjoy them more so as opposed to going in one Mania per day as we do over these next two. But yes, we are very much enjoying the project, and it's been very fun for us to see these WrestleManias. Some of us that we haven't, some of these that we haven't seen, and just being able to give those ratings and reviews to you is something we've been looking forward to doing. But with that, this has been the latest episode in WrestleMania 12 review of The Push. And this has been The Push with Nick and KP. If you like what we're putting out there, please let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, as that helps us out tremendously. And until next time, this has been The Push with Nick and KP. We'll see you soon. Take care.